Johnson, and I am the Director of Communications Rights for Disability Voices United. And this is our monthly Communication Access Connect. We are Disability Voices United. And I just thought, I never mentioned this, but we are a nonprofit and we get funding from a few different sources. And one of them is Ability Central. And I see they're here today. So I just wanted to say thank you, Ability Central. They don't necessarily, this isn't a grant project, but their support helps us do all the things that we do here at DVU. So thanks, Ability Central. William, you want to introduce yourself first? I'm going to introduce our team.
Hello, my name is William Del Rosario, and I am a 22-year-old Hispanic Filipino male with black hair, brown eyes, and my pronouns are he and him. I am a student intern with Disability Voices United. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, William. And then I'm going to turn it over to our assistant director.
I'm Tim Jin, and I am the Assistant Director of Communication Rights, and I have cerebral palsy.
All right. Tim, you want to introduce our guest? We're very excited about our guest speaker today, but Tim has the introduction, so I'm going to be quiet.
I've been very excited about today's session for months. I want to introduce you to the person of the hour that will change your vision of our society and culture. Lateef McLeod has earned a BA in English from UC Berkeley and an M.F. in creative writing from Mills College. He is a fifth-year graduate student in the Anthropology and Social Change doctoral program at California Institute for Integral Studies in San Francisco. Not only that, Mr. McLeod published his first poetry book entitled A Declaration of a Body of Love in 2010, chronicling his life as a Black man with a disability and tackling various topics on family, dating, religion, spirituality, his national heritage, and sexuality. He also published another poetry book entitled Whispers of Crip Love, Shouts of Crip Revolution in 2020. He is currently writing a novel tentatively entitled The Third Eye is Crying. He was in the 2007 and 2016 annual theater performances of Sins Invalid and also their artist-in-residence performance in 2011 entitled Resident Alien. In 2019, he started a podcast entitled Black Disabled Men Talk with co-hosts Leroy Moore, Keith Jones, and Otis Smith. More of his writings are available on his website lateefhmcleod.com and his Huffington Post blog. I have wanted to meet this remarkable person for a long time and heard from him through my various contacts. I always thought of him as a rock star. When I got asked if I wanted to be co-authors becoming an exceptional AAC leader, I jumped for the opportunity to meet him. Lateef and I are on the board for Communication First and has collaborated together on a few projects. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce to our voice of this session, the one and only, Mr. McLeod.
Thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. I am Lateef McLeod, and I use he and him pronouns. For a visual description of myself, I am a Black man with cerebral palsy with a low-cut fade and a button-up shirt. A window of Oakland is behind me. I am going to talk to you about how ableism is pervasive in our culture and how it affects all of us no matter if we are disabled or not. First, we need to properly define what ableism is. The disability justice activist, Talima Lewis, has a great definition of disability justice that I want to use for this presentation. A system that places value on people's bodies and minds based on societally constructed ideas of normality, intelligence, excellence, desirability, and productivity. These constructed ideas are deeply rooted in anti-Blackness, the eugenics, misogyny, colonialism, imperialism, and capitalism. This form of systematic oppression leads to people in society determining who is valuable and worthy based on a person's language, appearance, religion, and or their ability to satisfactorily reproduce, excel, and behave. You don't have to be disabled to experience ableism. In this definition, we clearly see that the oppression of ableism is clearly connected to racism, sexism, and the adverse effects of capitalism. Since it is intertwined with other forms of oppression in the culture, we can clearly see how embedded it is in the modern society. Society's always had negative connotations towards people with disabilities, having traditions of abandoning them at birth or regulating them to a marginalized position in the community. In the 19th century, some U.S. cities passed laws and ordinances that were known as ugly laws, which barred people with disabilities from being seen on public streets. Also during this time, family members started putting their disabled family members in medical institutions, a trend that was prevalent until the 60s and 70s. This legal discrimination of people with disabilities in public venues and other public spaces proceeded until the United States passed a series of disability rights laws starting approximately 50 years ago with the Rehabilitation Act. However, even with the passing of disability rights law, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, and innovation with assistive technology that assists people with disabilities with their daily lives, the disability communities still face marginalization in today's society, whether it is in the job market or other areas. While many people think of assistive technology and policy changes as the solutions to these inequities, these efforts are not adequate to address the profound cultural stigma that attends disability. This is why people with disabilities need to look beyond these approaches to achieving equity and continue to strive for substantial and revolutionary change. The disability community is full of potential but faces many barriers in becoming integrated into today's society. People with disabilities experience lower rates of employment than people without disabilities. For example, in 2019, the employment population ratio for people with disabilities was 19.3% compared to the ratio for those without disabilities, which was 66.3%. With people with disabilities largely out of work, the population is a significant barrier in integrating themselves into the dominant culture, where having a job is the prime indicator of if someone is a contributing member of her or his society. People in the disability community are still building their presence in the societal public sphere so that they can finally have a sense of belonging instead of being an oddity. Historically, mainstream society has not been designed with people with disabilities in mind, and it has barely adjusted to accommodate us. As mentioned earlier, for most U.S. history, disabled people were either banned from the streets or put in medical institutions. This is primarily due to our society's view of disability based on the medical model, which treats one's impairments as an individual problem that should be fixed with using medical solutions that adapt the person as closely as possible to societal body norms. In contrast, and as a reaction to the medical model, the disability community introduced has been promoting the social model of disability, in which the disabled body is not deemed deficient, but instead the social environment of a community must be adapted to become more accessible to disabled people. There is also the disability justice model, which adds on to the social model of disability by arguing that disability is just one facet of a disabled person's identity among other facets, like race and gender, that she or he has to negotiate in this identity-driven hierarchical society. Disability justice states that for true disability liberation to occur, we of course need to dismantle the capitalist system that totally devalues disabled bodies and minds, and have a society where all people are valued by their instinct worth. An outgrowth of this devaluing is transhumanists promoting the idea of eventually erasing disability with human augmented technology. They believe that through science and technology, they can perfect the human mind and body and blot out any imperfections to the human anatomy. This erasure of disability ignores all the positive contributions disabled people and disabled culture bring to our society. As a society, we should not strive to erase disability, but to build our society such that disability is one of the central considerations when building a community. This will only happen with greater respect for disability know-how and the heightened value of people with disabilities' point of view. Essentially, we also need a disabled-led movement so that this society is accessible for everyone. When this happens, people will not be defined by the labor that they can or cannot do, but by the relationships that they cultivate and the contributions they make in their community. This is how a disability liberation can come to fruition, and it will necessitate a huge culture shift in society. This is the conclusion of my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it.
Wow. Okay, thank you, Lateef. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, that's a big point, and that's a big point. Ryan says, I'm on a Progressive Democrats of America weekly Sunday call. That's how you get involved. You know, and please, people, write it in the chat and start the conversation going. But for me, I hadn't really thought about it as much as you've pointed out about the influence of capitalism. I mean, it makes sense. It's kind of like now sitting here going, well, of course, but yeah, just people assuming that your worth is based on what you can produce, right, in a capitalistic way.
Yes.
Yeah.
In my experience, people identify themselves most often through their job or occupation. Yes, in my experience, people identify themselves most often through their job or occupation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm even thinking about how if, like in a school system, that's where I spent most of my career, was working with schools. And, you know, the idea of inclusion, people think about, well, is it worth it? Which in code for, should we spend money on that, right? How much is it going to cost to get the supports? Again, it all goes back to the economics and the money, right? Interesting. I have here a couple of things that people have written. Heather wrote, she's president of People Working with Disabilities. People are rarely just one single thing. We are the intersection of all of the various aspects of our lives. Who we are is more than what we do in exchange for money. It is all aspects of ourselves, where we come from, where we're going, and who we are in 1,000 different ways. Excellent. And Mark wrote, yeah. Mark wrote, I assist a gentleman who works in social justice team out of a program called Design Hub at American River College in Sacramento. I'd love to share with this group. Did you want to get on and chat real quick, Mark, about who you are, what you're doing? I can ask you to unmute.
Sure. I'm actually currently listening to this at a gym, walking on a treadmill. But okay. I will come to a quiet spot and say, yeah, I work with a gentleman that works out of American River College. He's currently working on a team, working on finding out how to make the college more accessible, and also working on a bathroom app for people with disabilities and LGBTQ non-binary individuals as well. And a big part of what they're trying to do there is work on, you know, mingle social justice and with working with people with disabilities. And I really like this presentation because it gives a more of a holistic view. And again, trying to steer them away from trying to single people out with disabilities and making everything more accessible for everyone. You know, I think too often, and when it comes to, you know, making things more accessible, what they do is they make these spots for people who are handicapped, or, you know, or do certain things. And then, you know, it tends to, I believe, kind of, instead of like empowering people, it kind of separates people. And so I think that my personal view is that everything can be accessible for everybody rather than, you know, kind of singling out groups. And so I don't know, what you said was really inspiring. I think would kind of really kind of lean on, you know, thinking things of more holistically, thinking things from more of a social justice point of view and how it goes beyond like a single group. So again, I'd be more than I'd love to share what you just said with them, because I think it would get them a better perspective of what it means, you know, to be thinking about, you know, social justice, a point of view. So yeah, very inspiring. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Mark. Go.
Lateef, all of your points are on a whole new level that I've never thought about, like our community, how we are adapting to everyone else and they choose to not to adapt to us. Do you think as a typer, we are in our own community, such as the deaf community? Because as a typer, people doesn't really look at us to have our own community. They primarily see our disability first and then look at our communication skills.
Yes. There is definitely an AAC community where we identify and organize around our unique way of communication when I go to the International Society for Augmentative Alternative Communication, I definitely feel a community with other people who use AAC, who
Yeah.
have similar experiences as mine, and in fact, it basis of my dissertation is on the importance of people who use AAC. Mentoring younger generation and being role models. Yes, there is definitely an AAC community where we identify and organize around our unique way of communication. When I go to the International Society for Augmentative Alternative Communication, I definitely feel a community with other people who use AAC who have similar experiences as mine. And in fact, the basis of my dissertation is on the importance of people who use AAC, mentoring the younger generation and being role models.
Yeah, that's a good point. William, and kind of in the same venue that William had written, we are discounted before an investment in us even begins. For the world to see us being heard is so powerful. And Elena was asking a question about DDS and conservatorship, and I'm not sure I know the answer to that, but if anybody knows how we can help Elena, that'd be good. Harry says, I agree, people just don't understand. We do think and have our dreams and goals, and it's so hard for us to socialize in group settings everywhere. Yes. So many things are in my head. We're thinking. Judy, you got one? Okay, I'm trying to collect my thoughts. Go, Judy.
Absolutely. Hi, Lateef. I don't think we've ever met, but I've heard about you for years. Judy Mark, President of Disability Voices United. Really, really honored that you were joining us today, blown away by your presentation. So we talk about a lot of what you said today, a lot. But we also feel like we have to provide solutions, right? And so solutions are sometimes harder to figure out than the problems. And was wondering, you know, we work within the regional center system a lot and the problems that people are facing there, school districts as well as sort of the general community. But was wondering what solutions you have to offer. I know that's a lot to throw on you right now, but whether you, I believe you do get regional center services, what you've kind of felt, the way regional centers have treated you over the years and any possible solutions there. Sorry, it's a broad question, but would love to hear your views. Thanks.
Yes, I am a regional center client and I have many critiques of the system because the way it set up it kind of feel feels like clients are not always respected as fully adult human beings, and it is reflection of culture, because people that work for regional center are not immune to cultural trends. So how to change that maybe if we hire more people with developmental abilities that are qualified into regional center positions, it will help change some tendencies. Yes, I am a regional center client, and I have many critiques of the system because the way it's set up, it kind of feels like clients are not always respected as fully adult human beings, and it is the reflection of the culture because people that work for the regional center are not immune to cultural trends. So how to change that? Maybe if we hire more people with developmental disabilities that are qualified into regional center positions, it will help change some tendencies.
I love that. That's,
Yeah, I do love that. If you don't mind me responding real quick, it's so interesting that you say that because I remember sitting at my regional center's board meeting maybe 4 years ago or so, and they were very excitedly talking about this employment fair that they were going to have and how they invited the local restaurants and the local, Home Depots, really low wage jobs, but all these different companies. And so I raised my hand and I said, how is the regional center going to also be one of the companies that are hiring people with developmental disabilities? And they looked at me like shocked. And I said, well, how many people do you actually have employed here? They had about 250 employees at the time. And the executive director said, I think we have 6. And then another person said, no, actually, we only have 4. And of those 4, 3 of them were peer support. So the only people who could have those jobs were people with developmental disability. So basically the bottom line is that there was one person with a developmental disability employed out of 250 who had a job that was a competitive job in the community. So they talk the talk, they don't walk the walk. And so I think that's a really good point. And you've inspired me to go back and sort of advocate in that area. Thanks.
I love that.
Maybe we make a certain percentage of the employees at each regional center must have disabilities, or they don't have to necessarily only have developmental disabilities, but disabilities. I don't know. Ideas in my head, Lateef, that we're going to make you help us with.
Well, like you have, like for schools, and you have to have, the percentage of people of color, and the public schools anyways, right? And that we put all these quotients out there. I mean, maybe we need to, I hate when you have, personally, I'm frustrated by the fact that we have to make these rules for common sense. That just, because then it usually ends up backfiring on us later. But you kind of do, because people don't always have common sense.
That is a good idea to incentivize regional centers to hire people with disabilities. Yes, that is a good idea to incentivize regional centers to hire people with disabilities.
Yeah, that is a good idea. I was just on a call this morning with Momentum. They're out here in LA, and they have these 4 new vans that are called Refresh, and they're for health needs, like in the community. And it was kind of inspired by HCBS, but they have these 4 vans now that are going around. And some other ladies in the group were talking with Momentum and asked, well, who's using these vans? And the person from Momentum was saying, well, we're just putting them everywhere and anywhere, because people don't realize that people don't go out in the community because they can't use the restroom. So just to know that you could use the restroom out in public when you go out is going to make a difference. So I think people just getting to see and getting as a community, a culture, to know that the accessibility just means it's accessible to everybody. But I feel like we have to go one step, it's little, starting with, like Ryan knows, starting with curb cutouts in the community, but we shouldn't have to piece it together like this. Let's see, anything else? We've got, it's a huge barrier to be unable to use a public restroom. So exactly, that's what people were saying. I mean, that is the truth, right? Carrie says she's with Momentum. Great, let's see. And remember, you can jump in and ask questions, and I'll unmute you too if you raise your hand. You don't have to put it in the chat too. Go, Tim.
I have a question for all typers and AAC users. We have gone through many challenges and achievements in our lives. When I see a young child using their device to let others know what they want, it inspires me more to mentor them as much as possible. Do you feel the same way? It always rubs me the wrong way that they are not being heard by their own voice. Do you feel that you have the obligations to empower them no matter how old they are? Darlene and William, maybe you can explain this better than I can.
Well, I think and William, jump in, but I think what you're saying, Tim, so you can correct me if I'm not getting it right, that you're seeing yourself as a mentor to younger folks so they can see all that they can be and all that they can do, and so that their families can also see and everything that can happen when an individual has a voice and has a means of communication. That, I think that our system, this is me talking now, I think our system kind of influences the community by saying, oh, there's a lot of things that have to be fixed right away. We got to get all these. I mean, I'm not saying people shouldn't have therapy, but then the focus becomes on therapy, and no one's talking about lifestyles, inclusion in your family, inclusion in your community or your school system. They're talking about all the therapies you need. And again, not to say you aren't going to benefit from therapies, but when that becomes the whole focus, it's a pinpoint. That's all we're going to talk about. You don't talk about the person anymore. It's where the ableism comes in, right?
Yes.
Oh, Melissa said that she had a regional center case manager who had a disability, and she was great. Excellent. Gilda says representation is so important and needs to happen in leadership roles. Yeah, everybody getting out and being a mentor. Lorna says inclusion is not therapy. Exactly. Carrie says, but I don't see anything in Orange County and it's all in LA. Well, then how are we going to get it in Orange County, Carrie? That's what we got to figure out, right? And the Bay Area and the Central. And, there's so many pockets of California represented here on this call. How are we going to let everybody know?
Mentoring. Younger generation is so important. Yes, mentoring the younger generation is so important.
Yes. I think in supporting their families to know that, there's a full life out there for you and that we're supporting you in that process. I think that's important too, from what I hear from the families. kind of, my head's in solution land here. I'm like, what can we do? What can we do? We could, I like to think of solutions. I mean, what if like local CACs, like at the school districts, had to have an inclusive committee, an inclusive board? Just because it's like they're they're supposed to be representing the community to the SELPA, for example, to the school systems in that community. I don't think that there's anything in the way they run that talks about including individuals with educational or developmental disabilities. William says,
I
really true.
also think mentoring all generations is important also because any of us can lost our voice anytime in their lives.
Yep. Yep. And I don't know if anybody in the call here has had this experience, but I know so many as a school person, people have their voice and a certain segment of their IEP year life, and then all of a sudden it goes away because the new people didn't quite get it. And then maybe someone else later on picks it up and says, hey, did you know he used to do this back 6 years ago? And he hasn't had communication in all that time. That's not an uncommon experience. William says, really true communication happens everywhere. Parents want to talk to me about their child, but forget to include them sometimes. We can mentor on inclusion too. Yeah, they want to talk, but they don't include their kids. See, we got to support everybody. Rachel says, the first time I successfully used my AAC device in public was at Halloween to trick or treat. I had a voice and was understood. Oh, that's a big impact on the community. That's a good one. And Heather said, in addition to providing support, it's important to foster and empower a sense of self-advocacy. Absolutely. I'm waiting to see if someone's saying something here. Tim, were you saying something? He'll catch up. So, okay. Carrie says UCP built accessible apartments in LA, and 2 apartment complexes are in Stanton and Irvine in Orange County. And Heather says, I have to jump off soon. Okay, because they're monthly national caucus meetings. Okay, great. Thank you, Heather. Are there inaccessible apartment complexes? I guess there are, but our new apartment complexes, don't they all have to have accessibility or not? Is that a rule? I don't know.
I thought they had to be. I thought they had to be.
I would think that especially new builds, right? Maybe old builds might be a different story, but new builds for sure. Mark says accessible by the letter of the law only in my experience. And accessible doesn't mean it's inclusive either, right? So still making sure everybody has the support they need to be a part of whatever apartment complex they moved into or whatever neighborhood they moved into. That matters. It might depend on the size of the complex too. Oh, okay. Maybe. Who judges accessibility? Able-bodied persons. Yeah. Yeah.
I found it always easier for me to speak when I am having fun with my friends, and that is how I build up my confidence over time.
Yeah. What, okay, here's a question too. I'm not an AAC user, clearly, but what do you all think as AAC users? Talk about the barriers to, I understand equipment and stuff, but what's the barriers to getting involved in the community? Are there ways that you wish you could be more involved in the community that you're not getting to do, getting to be a part of? Or whether it be staffing or living situations or equipment, I don't know. Thanks, Lourdes, for that info. Okay, so Melissa says a certain number of, oh, let's keep talking about the housing. A certain number of units are supposed to be accessible in newer buildings. Okay, thanks. Tim and William are typing. I don't know if anybody else is.
I've always wanted to be in my homeowners association board, but I'm afraid that they won't give me enough time to type.
Oh, that's a cultural thing, isn't it? That's a good one. I mean, a good point, not a good experience, but a good. Carrie says, I'm involved in chair volleyball in her LDS church. Cool that they have that for you, Carrie. William's saying something. Oh, Lourdes is saying, you know, copy this email and this website because it's a good one for housing. When you find new buildings and affordable buildings, best kept secret. Okay, Rachel says, I no longer use AAC. I use a letterboard, and my limitation is also having a trained communication partner. So the barriers, it goes back to the trained communication partner. Rachel, I think your letterboard is AAC personally, but that's on you. And Melissa says verbal communication moves really fast. So timing, again, timing. William
Yes.
says, yeah.
A. Communication board is low tech. AAC and my barrier to get out is usually either busy schedules of me or my friends. Yes, a communication board is low-tech AAC, and my barrier to get out is usually either the busy schedules of me or my friends.
The busy schedule, so time again, time. William says staffing for sure and funding resources, wanting to find me a program instead of letting me design my preferences. That goes back to what you were talking about today, right, Lateef, that we're not really looking at the individuals. Has anybody ever written to regional centers or school districts or any other or DOR people and said, you know, you're gonna have to allow extra time because I'm an AAC user and I'm gonna need to be included in this conversation? Do people try that? Gary says time to write everything out always is a problem for all of us. Yeah. And Joyce said this is from 2016. Has anyone heard of any updates? Oh, the LA Times housing settlement. I don't know. Because time and training staff and having this, well, time and support are things that you guys have talked about so far. As far as getting accessibility to your communication.
Here is a funny observation that I've experienced. When I'm in the community with my friends who uses all type of forms of communication, we take as much time as we want to converse and listen. It's very different with my non-AAC friends because they are always in a rush and they are always missing 90% of the conversation.
That's very true. It's very European of you, Tim. But yeah, I think to sit and socially, I mean, I'll speak as a speaking person, you know, we go fast. Yeah. We gotta make it, we gotta change that up. I think William's putting something together here too. So what are we gonna do, Lateef, to make a big social change?
I We can change culture by allowing people with disabilities a space to advocate for a society that will be more equitable for us disabled people. I think a way to change culture is to have disabled people produce all types of media, and it being more prevalent in society. I think a way to change culture is to have disabled people produce all types of media, and it being more prevalent in society.
Yeah. But I think that, yeah, and having people prevalent in media, but playing the role or the part or demonstrating, however you want to talk about it, just that you're part of the community. It's not that the show's about the person with the disability and how we all function with the person with the disability, but it's just you're a person in our community, right? And so maybe the conversation slows down. That kind of thing, just because it's part of our society that we all have to live and accommodate each other. That's just part of how we should all be doing. Yeah, not making it the focus of the show necessarily. Maybe, I don't know. Some people like those shows. But that everybody's a part of everybody's world.
Yes.
The person that has a disability shouldn't be in the spotlight.
Right. It's family members or whatever the role is, whatever the storyline is, right? Rachel says, I got time accommodations for the ACT test, but wasn't allowed to use my preferred communication partner or have the communication partner write down problem solving, just write answers. Expecting me to do all the calculations in my head was bizarre. Yes, that is bizarre. Since I wouldn't have been able to do that. William says, see me, not my AAC. See, and Rachel, what you're bringing up makes me think these are like government people, right? These are the board people looking at the ACT test and then telling people they can't use their accommodations. How is that okay? And Lorna, there's a message in Spanish that I want to make sure I'm not missing. At 5:05. Or Ernest. People speak, they speak and think slower. Well, except a lot of time, yeah. It'd probably benefit a lot of speaking people if people would speak and think slower too. Private organization sets its own policy, not government. Okay. But we have to look at, is that okay with us? Kind of like Lateef was talking, capitalism, right? In the bigger public sectors, is it going to be okay that we accept that these entities that are given power are making decisions that don't include or allow you access? We have stakeholders and voters as well as we are stakeholders and voters as well as taxpayers. Right, voting is a good idea, right? Everybody should be voting. I'm looking to see, is anybody generating? Tim, William, are you good? Okay. What was I gonna think about? Looking at the social. We were talking one day in our group, in our communication access, and I kind of like visualized like the hearing impaired community has a community and has a social culture that gets the acceptance of this is our culture, right? And so I know it's not 100% foolproof, but if people say, well, this is the way we live culturally, usually, especially at least in special education, we know what they mean. How does that status or that ability or that perk or however you, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's just a change. It's not a disability thing. It's this is our culture. This is how we do things in our culture. It's almost, it's on the road of being closer to accepted, right? Than AAC is. How does that happen? How does that phenomena happen?
I think by AAC. Community. Constantly advocating for inclusion and acceptance in all areas of our society and culture. I think by the AAC community constantly advocating for inclusion and acceptance in all areas of our society and culture.
Emphasis on all. Huh?
It may be because most of us uses technology to express ourselves, rather than the person who is deaf is most likely using their hands for sign language.
Maybe. Yeah. Anything else? Carrie says AAC culture sounds awesome because we do have our own language. Well, okay, sure. But I think you also have your own communication style, right? So like you're saying, things need to be slowed down compared to speaking community, right? That's a communication style. Having a second person there to help support you or to translate or interpret for you. That's something that the speaking community doesn't have. And so that's a communication lifestyle difference that people have to adjust to and just be informed about, right? That this is how it goes. Make the shift. William says, back to changing the focus to being on setting the expectation. Yep, here goes William. Setting the expectation, not making the single exception. It's just the expectation is people will communicate. That makes me think, William, about the fact that people will have to do testing in order to decide if they are going to benefit from AAC. Right? That not necessarily, I mean, there are really great professionals who say, I'm going to do this problem solving assessment so I can figure out how you can communicate. But I think there's more professionals out there who say, we're going to see if you'll benefit from AAC. They're not setting the expectation that you're going to communicate for sure.
This is a reminder. Don't forget the parking pass. Where you
William's typing, so I'm hanging for a second here. Communication is a part of human dignity. It absolutely.
When I'm
Absolutely.
at a restaurant, the person who is taking my order usually doesn't want to take their time to take my order. They always ask the other person next to me on what I want.
Yes. Communication is essential for human
Mhm.
dignity. Yes, communication is essential for human dignity.
Absolutely. Ernest or Lorna, can you read the Lulu's comment at 516, please? Yep. Because communication is a two-way street. And so if the other person isn't doing their part, and maybe their part is just to accept and relax and slow down, if they're not doing that part, then it breaks down. Lateef or William or Tim or anybody want to comment on Lulu's piece?
Yes. Language. Discrimination is a real problem in this English centric society, and we need more effort to hold more space for multiple languages. Yes, language discrimination is a real problem in this English-centric society, and we need more effort to hold more space for multiple languages.
Holding this, I love how you keep going back to holding the space, Lateef. That's so key. I want to make sure that the AAC users have time to. We have 10 more minutes before we need to close the meeting out. So just allowing for time. Giving you a heads up. Williams type in. At DVU, we talk about developing, because this is on our agenda, is to develop a speakers bureau. And, but I think we see that as a group of advocates that can be available to speak on behalf of people with developmental disabilities, whether it be communication or however it would be. But I'm feeling like we kind of might need a mentor bureau, where people can be available to families and individuals in their own communities to mentor and connect.
Yes. That is a great idea. Yes, that is a great idea.
Yeah, I'm gonna think more on this. And then I'm going to ask all of you on the call here, of course, to sign up to be a part of the Mentor Bureau. You got to know that. Carrie says it's been nice to have these meetings for AAC users. Yes, it is. We're excited that there are so many AAC users that join. I mean, that just blows our mind every week. So thank you. William says, good point. Doing something to satisfy a minimum requirement without full access sends the message you are already seen as less. Everyone should have equal access to full participation. Yeah, I have to read that again for myself. Essentially, a minimum requirement without full access sends the message. All right, yep. Yep. Yeah, I'm getting a great visual there, William. I'm thinking if we gave a person, we said, we're working on getting you some shoes. Here, we'll start with the shoelaces. Next year, we'll give you some canvas topper. Maybe then a sole will come the next 3 years, right? Who would do that? Lourdes says we need a report like this one. Okay, we're gonna grab that, Lourdes. But between AAC users and non-users. I'm gonna attempt to grab that. And I'm going to look at it. Thank you, Lourdes. I'll look that up. Okay, I do want to tell, okay, we need data to know if year after year change is being tracked or not. Yeah. I want you all to know that next month for communication access, we're gonna have the topic of communication partners. Like, what are the elements? What do we need? How are we gonna get it? How are we gonna train for it? All of that, like, just get some ideas going. Everybody share what their needs are. And that'll be the October meeting, I think, right, Tim? Communication partners, okay. And then also just to know, putting the word out there, this is you guys are first to know. December, what's it gonna be? December 2nd.
December 2nd.
December 2nd is the self-determination conference, and it's going to be virtual. So the blast on all this information is going to come out by the end of this week, we're hoping, right? And so watch for that. That'll be the self-determination conference that Disability Voices United puts out, and we will have information. There you go. There's information Ed's just put in here about our Mondays. We announce, make our events and all of that known to you guys. So if you're on our mailing list, you'll get that information every Monday, what's going on this week in DVU. I want to thank you, Lateef. And I hope that one day I get to hang out and just sit and chat with you. Because it has been really, this is great. I think this is such an important conversation that we all have to have, and we all have to work for these social changes. That's what we have to be.
Lateef, I know that you are busy. Do you think it'd be possible to have you back on again in a much larger scale? Perhaps presenting to Disability Voices United board and more, because your word of space is totally a part of how inclusion should be.
I will have to get back to you because I am working to finish my dissertation. I will have to get back to you because I am working to finish my dissertation.
Of course. And for you to know, Lateef, if there's anything that you're working on or comes your way and you want us to get this community, the word out through this community that we have here, please just send us an email. We'd love to be involved in anything that comes up. Yeah. Well, thank you all. Thank you very much, Lateef. Thank you, Tim, William, and all the people that contributed in our chat. It's been a great conversation, and we'll see you on the third Tuesday of October. What month are we in? In October, we will see you. Have a good one.